Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Heather Stamper, and today is a book talk day, my March reviews. Well, I was fighting a cold, and I figured you guys didn't want to hear me cough and hack and stuff like that and be gross. So you're welcome. I have several books that we're going to talk about today. First one I'm going to talk about is The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. I gave this one 3 bookmarks, and I used this for the category for a book about the afterlife. It's also one of the ones that are on the challenge book list, so double points for me there. It's the story of Susie Salmon, if you haven't seen the movie, who observes her family and her friends as they cope with her murder. I like the depiction of the afterlife. The afterlife is viewed as a place that she's familiar with. For her, it's like a school, and they have like a dorm room, and they go to classes. They're not really classes, they're just going through the motions. But still, this is like they go to the cafeteria and eat whatever food that they want to eat. But it was a hard book to read and listen to because, anytime it's a story about a death or a violent death of a child, that's just rough. And then having the narrator being, the spirit of said child. So I'm just going to leave it with that. Now, the next book, the category is a book from an author that I read in 2021. This one is Moon Over Soho by Ben Aaronovich. I really enjoyed the first one, Midnight Riot. It is the continuation of the Rivers of London series, where you have Peter Grant, the detective, who stumbles upon different supernatural events, and so he's getting trained up as a wizard. So in this particular volume, he comes across a really nasty crime scene, and the corpse is of a part-time jazz drummer, full-time accountant, and it was just a very messy death. And every time he comes across these series of bodies, they're all jazz players, and they all have like this residual effect of the song Body and Soul. And so just like there's your strange link there. He's still working with his partner and his mentor, Inspector Thomas Nightingale, who was the last registered wizard in England. And yes, the Harry Potter jokes continue from the Midnight Riot. There's other characters in there this time. You've got a beautiful jazz aficionado, Simone Fitzwilliam, who she becomes very involved with Detective Grant. And, this is like sometimes funny, sometimes it's like, oh, let's turn that page, I'm going to blush, type of deal. In this entangled magical web of, it's like what's happening to these jazz musicians. He comes across that his father, Richard Lord Grant, is a jazz musician, dear old dad, kind of on the washed up end of things, but he too is a target and has been a target of the people involved. I gave this one 4 bookmarks. Again, it's really funny, and it's got some serious detective-y goodness stuff. So if you're into that kind of thing, like supernatural and stuff like that, then you're gonna like this one. The next book is actually play. It's The Crucible by Arthur Miller. And this one was for a topic for having to do with witches. Now, I've read several books about witches, some nonfiction, some fiction, some YA, all the things in between. And so I was looking for something a little different. And I've seen the movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder. Loved it. Here's the thing about The Crucible. It is, but it isn't about witches. It's about the Salem witch trial and the hysterics that went involved in accusing everybody. But it also was written in 1953 during the blacklisting of actors and actresses and other Hollywood types because of anti-communism. It was like, oh no. I listened to the audio play of it, and Richard Dreyfuss and Michael York are in it. and they are fantastic. I will say, if you choose to listen to it, at your speed, probably a notch lower than what you usually do. I'm usually at 1.25 at a speed, because it sounds like a natural conversation for me. I had to turn it down to a 1 because they do speak in rather hushed tones a lot of the time and rather quickly. So again, Abigail Williams really jonesing for that Proctor guy, going to get that wife out of the way, and other scheming shenanigans that other people, it's like all of the people that are accused of witchcraft are either people that have, don't respect the minister, or that they have land that somebody else wants, or, they just are indigent, or they're, weird looking, or whatever. They're going to find a way to accuse them. And so very well done. Again, turn the speed down a little bit, turn the volume up. Very good. In reading the play, it's a fast read. I mean, you can whip through that real quick. So The Crucible, 4 bookmarks, classic. So the next book I read had a reflective image or a mirror on the cover. So I read The Firekeepers Daughter by Angeline Boulley, gave it 4 bookmarks. It's about 18-year-old Donis Fontaine, who is half white, half Ojibwe Native American. And she's kind of accepted, but not accepted in both sides of her genetic makeup, per se. She's trying to go into college. She loves hockey. She was a star hockey player for the school until she really injured her shoulder. She wanted to go away to college for a fresh start, but then when tragedy strikes her family, she kind of puts that on hold so that she can take care of her mom. The only bright spot in the whole thing is the new hockey player, who is a super dreamboat. His name is Jamie. Heart eyes all over the place, okay? And he seems to be interested in her. He plays on her half-brother Levi's hockey team, which is mostly Native American players anyway. And so they start interacting with each other and talking, and they start getting closer. And then something else happens. Donis witnesses a murder of a very close friend. It turned into like a meth ring operation. And it turns out her boy Jamie is a member of the FBI, and he was on a sting operation in which he had to get close to her to see if he could find out who's behind this meth operation, because it's got some weird hallucinogenic powers, this particular bat. I like the fact that it deals with the stereotyping of, it's like what white people think is correct and versus what the Ojibwe tribe thinks is correct, and how they deal with problems. So Donis gets pulled into this FBI investigation, and she is an informant. And the more she digs in, the more complicated her feelings are for this guy, Jamie, and the more complicated she finds her relationships with the people that she has known all her life. And she learns what it means to be a good Anishinaabe Kwe, or an Ojibwe woman. I like the fact that, spoiler alert, not really, they don't end up together at the end. They leave it open for the possibility, but they don't take it there. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Because it seems like so many of the YA type books kind of happily ever after, and you don't need that. And so I really like when stories do that. So again, 4 bookmarks. So the next book I read was a book that's becoming either a series or a movie in 2022, The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chainani. I'm not sure if I got that part right. Sorry in advance. I gave this one 4 bookmarks. I liken it unto Wicked meets Hogwarts. Pick another magical school type fantasy, and you kind of got the idea. Best, and I use big quotation marks on this, best friends Sophie and Agatha are about to discover where all the lost children in their town for the last 200 years have gone. every 4 years, 2 kids are whisked away and they're never seen again, but yet somehow their images come up in the storybooks, books of fairy tales that the town gets. So they're about to find out how that goes down. Now, Sophie, she wants to get swept up. She wants to get swept away into this fairy tale realm. She's got theories about this, because she's the prettiest. She has all the great superficial values that you would expect of a princess. She likes pink. She likes ball gowns. She wants glass slippers. I mean, she knows how to accessorize and then some. And, and she helps the poor, and her acts of kindness would be like giving corsets to the homeless women because everybody needs a lift, I guess. And part of her thinking is becoming friends with the opposite of that spectrum there. Agatha is your classic goth loner emo wannabe. Okay, she wears all black. She lives like in Shrek. She lives in the very undesirable part of town by the graveyard. Nobody wants to come visit, and she likes it that way. But she becomes attached to Sophie because, she's the only person that ever considered her normal, whatever that is. She follows Sophie into the woods because Sophie's bound and determined to be taken, and Agatha doesn't believe in all this nonsense, and she wants to stop her friend before she gets hurt. So they both get taken, and they get dropped off, but not in the place where they thought they were going to be. Agatha is sent to the school for good, and Sophie is sent to the school for evil. So both of them is like, this is a mistake. Agatha just wants to go home, and Sophie is bound and determined to get into the school of good or die trying. So School for Good has things like beautification and princess etiquette, animal communication, and if you're a guy, you would be, taking heroics classes and, sword fighting beasties and stuff like that. And in the School for Evil, you have uglification classes on death curses and henchman training, things like that. So, it's kind of funny. And I enjoyed, it's like the way that the reader was doing this because it was pretty darn funny. It does have a very, very dark side to it because Agatha discovers, the seedy underbelly of the school, as in what happens to those who don't quite make the cut for being either extremely good or extremely evil. Let's just say it's not good. It's definitely something that you would think a Hunger Games thing would come from this because golly, I'm not going to give anything away though. So it's very interesting. I know there's more than one book of this. Frankly, though, by the time I finished this one, I felt I had a complete story. I didn't feel the need to rush out and get the next one. So, but you do you. If you've read the other books, please let me know in the comments below because I would love to hear about it. The next book I read was Rump by Liesl Shurtliff. It's one of those books that you can read in one setting. I recommend you don't because it's a good one to kind of just sit there and absorb. This is one of those middle grade fictions, and oh my gosh, it is awesome. 4 bookmarks. It's basically the story of Rumpelstiltskin told from Rumpelstiltskin's perspective, and he's a 12-year-old boy. Now, Rump is all the name that he knows because his mother died before she got a chance to finish saying his name. So there's your tragic backstory right there. Comes to find out that he inherited a curse from his mother that he's able to spin straw into gold. His mother was one of those magical weaver people. The problem is, he can spin all the straw into gold, but when he goes to trade it for food for him and his dear old granny, he has to take whatever is offered him, whether it's fair or not. So he goes to the miller, who's the one who trades the gold for food and then gives the gold to the king. So he's kind of like miller / tax collector. He's like, oh, I see you have a couple bobbins of gold thread. here's a bag of moldy potatoes. And he'd take it because the curse, he's compelled to do that. So it's a very unusual curse, but it makes a lot of sense, because who in their right mind would spin a whole room of straw into gold for a cheap necklace and a tin ring? Okay, I mean, come on now. Now things get interesting when the king comes by, because he's like, hey, have y'all been holding out on me with this gold? What gives? And he goes, and the miller says, oh, it's my daughter who did it. Little did he know that the king was going to take said daughter to the castle to spin straw into gold. So the miller's like, you need to get over there and you need to make sure this happens, okay? Because I don't want anything bad to happen to my daughter. Too late. And I don't want anything bad happening to me. So you go on up there and you do the things, okay? And so you get that story, and the side story, it's like he goes on a quest to find this thing that's supposed to help his curse, because he doesn't want to take the queen's baby. He really doesn't want that. He's 12. He's not about that life, okay? But because she promised him the baby, if he hears about it being born, he feels compelled to go back to the castle to go get it. So he runs away. And in the process, he comes across very interesting characters. He learns that his name is not just his destiny. He is more than that. So you got good values. It's really funny. I'm reading it to my students now, and they love it. Love it, love it. And they can't wait for me to read more. So yeah, Rump, 4 bookmarks. Okay, and finally, the one book that I gave 5 bookmarks to, In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez, the category being a Latinx author. It's a blend of fact and fiction. The majority of the story takes place at the end of Trujillo's reign in the Dominican Republic. And it's about these sisters. 3 of them were counter-revolutionaries, and their code name was Las Mariposas, or the Butterflies. The story is told through recollections of the one sister, Dede, who didn't join her sisters. And the 3 sisters, they were visiting their husbands in a prison because they were caught. The ladies were under house arrest pretty much, but they were given special permissions to go and visit, their husbands, and, being closely watched. And then on the way back from their trip through the mountains, there was a mysterious bombing just out of the blue. What do you know? And the 3 women die. And so the only one left is the one sister who stayed, dealing with her thoughts and consequences of things. But you also get the point of view of the other sisters. You've got Patria, who is the oldest, and she originally thought her life was going to be in the service of God. And you got Minerva, who is the ringleader of the group. She's the feisty middle child spitfire. And then you've got the youngest, sensitive Maria Teresa, who, very passionate, very deep thinker. She had diaries that were left behind. And so it is true that there were these women, 4 sisters, one who lived and the other 3 who died in, the horrific bombing, to get them out of the way, and how they are honored now in the Dominican Republic. And it also gives thoughts from the one sister, Dede, what she thinks about the current situations and political format of the Dominican Republic. So very fascinating. 5 bookmarks all the way. Well, that's it for this video. Let me know what you think of the books. If you've read them, if you want to read them, whatever. And I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.